Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're not just, reading the headline of a quarterly report. We are putting a financial behemoth right under the microscope. Our mission is to go beyond those simple stock movements and perform a true diagnosis to really understand the fundamental why behind a massive corporate performance shift.
Exactly. We are tackling financial statements using what is, well, arguably the most powerful diagnostic tool in any analyst's toolkit. And the performance shift we're talking about, it's just staggering. We are looking at Walmart. They managed to more than double their return on equity, their ROE, in just 2 years. It went from 9.0% in year X1 all the way up to 18.6% in year X2.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that is an explosive rate of improvement. And you, as an analyst, you have to understand if that growth is built on solid ground or temporary quicksand.
And the tool that lets us do that lets us break that one big number down into actual operational causes, is the DuPont Framework. I like to think of ROE as the patient's overall health score.
That's a great analogy.
And the DuPont Framework doesn't just give you that score. It gives you the blood pressure, the heart rate, the cholesterol levels. It takes that one number and it decomposes it into 3 completely distinct, manageable business levers. We are going to unpack those levers right now because this is where the strategy really lives.
Okay, so let's start with the base metric itself, ROE. It's simply net income divided by stockholders' equity. So for every single dollar shareholders have invested in the business, how many cents of profit did the company actually generate?
Right. And there's a benchmark for that, isn't there?
There is. As a general rule of thumb, financial professionals consider anything consistently over 20% to be excellent. So Walmart, they went from being firmly mediocre at 9% to, knocking on the door of excellence at nearly 19%.
And that transition is exactly what we have to explain. The DuPont equation forces us to look at those 3 components that, when you multiply them together, give you that final ROE number: profitability, efficiency, and leverage.
Let's define them clearly. So the first one is profitability. It's also known as the net profit margin. This is your net income divided by your sales. In layman's terms, it's just asking, after paying for everything, inventory, wages, taxes, all of it, how much profit do we keep for every dollar we ring up at the register?
Okay, so if your profit margin is, say, only 1%, everything else being equal, that 1% is always going to be a drag on your ROE.
Always. It measures your cost control and, well, your pricing power.
Got it. What's number 2?
Number 2 is efficiency, or asset turnover. That's sales divided by total assets. This one's all about speed and utilization. If you have $1 tied up in a store, a truck, or a box of inventory, how many dollars in sales are you squeezing out of that asset over the year?
So a high number is good here. Like an asset turnover of 2.0 would mean every dollar of assets is generating $2 in sales. That sounds pretty good.
It's very good. It's fast. It's a sign of a very, very well-oiled operational machine.
And the final piece?
The final piece is leverage, measured by the equity multiplier. That's total assets divided by stockholders' equity. This is really the financial risk component. It shows how much you're using debt. So if your multiplier is, say, 3.0, it means for every $1 shareholders put in, the company actually controls $3 in assets.
So the extra $2 are coming from debt.
Exactly. Leverage enhances gains, but you have to remember, it also multiplies losses. It's a double-edged sword.
Okay, so we have the 3 levers: profitability, efficiency, leverage. Now, let's apply the framework to Walmart's spectacular jump. From 9% all the way up to 18.6%. The diagnosis is, it's immediate, and it's really surprising.
It truly is. When we plug in the numbers, the framework tells us exactly what drove the change. And while all 3 levers did move a little, the overwhelming driver was profitability. Walmart's net profit margin skyrocketed from 1.4% to 2.9%.
Wait, hold on. It doubled.
It effectively doubled the profit they kept on every single dollar of sales.
So for every $100 that went through the register, they went from keeping $1.40 to keeping $2.90. For a company of that size, that's a huge shift.
It's transformational. Now look at the other 2 levers. Efficiency, or their asset turnover, it actually declined slightly during this period. It moves from 2.35 down to 2.22. So that was a clear drag on the overall performance.
Okay, so their core operational speed actually slowed down a bit. For a low-margin retailer like Walmart, that seems like a potential warning sign.
It is. It absolutely is. But that small efficiency drag was slightly mitigated by the final lever, leverage. The equity multiplier increased a little bit, which gave them a small financial boost. It moved from 2.75 to 2.90, so that suggests they took on a bit more debt, or maybe reduced equity during that time.
So the small boost from leverage and the small drag from efficiency, they kind of canceled each other out. The DuPont framework has just delivered the smoking gun. The overwhelming reason for that massive ROE surge was singular. It wasn't faster operations, and it wasn't some radical shift in capital structure. It was profitability.
And that's the genius of the diagnosis. We can now, for a moment, put operational speed and debt structure to the side and focus 90% of our energy on this profitability miracle. We can move from the what, which is the doubling of the profit margin, to the why.
Right. So knowing profitability was the key, we have to go deeper than just the bottom line. We need to bring out the next magnifying glass, which is the common size income statement. For anyone less familiar, this is where we take every single expense, cost of goods sold, SG&A, all of it, and we calculate it as a percentage of total sales. This will tell us exactly which part of the company's financial structure grew or shrank to create that margin jump.
And this is where the story gets really complex and, frankly, pretty surprising. If you assume that this doubling of profit margin meant Walmart was, charging higher prices or getting better deals from suppliers,
Really?
improving their gross margin, well, you would be incorrect.
Wait, what? They weren't selling their products for a larger percentage profit.
No. The source material shows that their cost of goods sold, or COGS, actually increased as a percentage of sales. It went from 74.6% to 75.3%.
So for every dollar of sales, they were spending more on the stuff they were selling.
Exactly. Which means Walmart's core gross profit margin was actually shrinking. It was putting more pressure on the business. That's the bad news here.
That seems like a really tough model. If your core product margin is shrinking, where on earth did that massive profitability improvement come from?
It's a study in two very distinct, very crucial financial moves. First, just the brilliance of operational discipline. There's selling, general, and administrative expenses that you see today decreased significantly. It dropped from 21.3% to 20.8% of sales.
Okay, 0.5%. That doesn't sound like much.
It sounds small, but remember the scale of Walmart? A 0.5% reduction on hundreds of billions of dollars in sales. That translates into billions of dollars in savings, hitting the bottom line directly.
Ah, that's a monumental achievement in cost control then. So that's everything that isn't the inventory itself. We're talking rent, utilities, staff scheduling, logistics.
That's operational brilliance, pure and simple. That 0.5% shift alone is the difference between a good year and a great year. But there was another element, one that provided the final spectacular thrust to double the margin. And it wasn't related to selling groceries or clothes at all.
You're talking about the non-operating event.
I am. The biggest swing came from a line item tucked away at the bottom of the statement, other revenue expenses. This line item swung dramatically from being a 0.6% expense to a 0.4% revenue. That's a full percentage point shift in non-operating activities.
A whole 1% improvement right there. But what does that even mean? Is that like finding cash under the sofa cushions? What kind of revenue disappears?
Sometimes it is. Non-operating gains can come from asset sales, selling off a distribution center, maybe closing a struggling international division, or maybe a big one-time legal settlement. The point is, this gain was a major contributor to that doubled profitability. But because it's non-operating, it raises massive red flags about sustainability.
Right. You can't sell a distribution center every year.
You can't.
So that completely changes the narrative. The final conclusion on profitability is this doubling of ROE wasn't because their core product sales got way more profitable. They actually got a little bit worse. Instead, the win came from stellar SG&A cost control, which is repeatable, combined with a significant but likely one-time non-operating gain.
Exactly. So an investor who's looking for sustainable organic growth needs to discount that one-time gain and focus purely on the SG&A discipline. If that discipline ever falters, the whole ROE structure just crumbles.
Okay, now let's circle back and zero in on that third piece of the puzzle. That slight but worrying decline in efficiency, that drop in asset turnover from 2.35 to 2.22. Even though it was offset by the profitability gains, for a high-volume retailer like Walmart, efficiency is the entire strategic pillar. A drop here is a strategic vulnerability.
It is, and this is where we bring in that classic strategic concept, return on assets, or ROA. ROA is simply your profit margin multiplied by your asset turnover. In businesses, they really have two fundamentally different ways to achieve a healthy ROA, and you can't be weak on both.
You can be a Formula One car, or you can be a luxury yacht.
Precisely. You have Model 1, the Walmart Formula One model, high turnover, low margin. They make very, very little profit on each item. that 2.9% margin we just discussed. So they must rely on extreme speed and volume. The assets have to be turning constantly.
And Model 2, the luxury yacht jewelry store. Low turnover, high margin. They make huge profits on each sale, maybe 50% or more, so they don't need that constant traffic. They can afford to be quiet. So if Walmart's turnover is slowing down, that's like putting mud tires on a race car.
It creates a tremendous strain on the model. So we need to look deeper into the specific operational ratios to see where the speed was lost and maybe where it was maintained.
Okay, let's start with their strengths. How are they managing inventory? That's the biggest asset on their books.
Their inventory management is just world-class, and they actually improved it slightly. Their days in inventory fell from 41.7 days to 41.0 days. That means they are turning their inventory into cash even faster. And just to put that into context, a close competitor like Target carries inventory for about 61.5 days.
Wow, so Walmart is moving its goods 20 days faster. That's huge.
It's critical to their whole low-cost structure.
Okay, so if inventory management got better, where did the overall asset turnover drop come from? We have to look at their property, plant, and equipment, the big stores, and the warehouses.
And that is the area of concern. We look at the fixed asset turnover ratio, which measures how well they use those big, expensive assets to generate sales. And that ratio fell in year X2. This confirms they are generating fewer sales for every dollar invested in new or existing stores and distribution centers.
So they're getting less bang for their buck when they open a new store or upgrade an old one.
That's the simplest way to put it. And if we look at a competitor, Target's fixed asset turnover was around 3.0 during this time. Now, Walmart's number is still structurally higher, but the fact that their core metric, the one that defines their entire high turnover strategy, is moving in the wrong direction, that's a major strategic failure hiding underneath that flashy ROE headline.
And to make it even more complicated, the analysis also flagged a growing, kind of mysterious line item called other assets.
Absolutely. This unexplained category also contributed to the overall efficiency drag. So think about this. If Walmart, the leader in efficiency, is seeing its operational speed slow down and its fixed assets become less productive, and at the same time it's tying up growing amounts of capital in unclassified other assets, that points to potentially inefficient capital allocation across the board.
That synthesis just wraps up the incredible complexity we've uncovered here. We started with one single metric, a doubled ROE, and through this systematic decomposition of the DuPont Framework, we've exposed the full messy truth. The spectacular headline was built on a really shaky foundation of worsening core gross margins and slowing physical asset utilization. And all of that was masked by operational brilliance in SG&A and a large one-time financial gain.
The final lesson here is that sustainability is everything. For Walmart, the structural weakness in turnover, that failure of those big assets to keep up the pace, it had to be compensated by that massive strength in margin. But since that margin was so heavily reliant on a non-recurring gain, the strategic problem is still there. It's unsolved.
We found that the efficiency analysis consistently pointed to a serious strategic concern. The utilization of property, plant, and equipment combined with the growth of that opaque and, uninvestigated category called other assets.
Right. A high turnover business like Walmart simply cannot afford to have capital sitting idle. Every single dollar of assets must be actively generating sales. The fact that a growing portion of their balance sheet is tied up in something management just calls other assets raises the crucial question for investors and for management going forward.
And that question is, what exactly are those other assets? And are they tying up the valuable cash that Walmart's high turnover model desperately needs to maintain its speed and its strategic advantage? That mystery right there is the key. The key to determining if their doubled ROE is just a fluke of timing or if it's a new structural reality. And that is the next layer of the puzzle you need to explore.